And Russian President Vladimir Putin is in India on a two-day state visit, the highly anticipated trip that marks a pivotal chapter in Moscow-New Delhi ties.
Right, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi greeted the Russian President at the Palam Technical Airport, showcasing their strong relationship and admiration for each other. And this with a warm hug and also a car ride together.
Now, Prime Minister Modi gifted a Russian edition of Bhagavad Gita to the Russian president, calling teachings of the Gita an inspiration for millions across the world.
Today, Putin will receive a ceremonial welcome at Rashtrapati Bhavan, followed by a visit to Rajghat to pay homage to Mahatma Gandhi.
The Russian president will then have bilateral talks with the Prime Minister at Hyderabad House. Discussions are aimed at strengthening economic ties, enhancing trade routes, and advancing cooperation in military technology, logistics, and innovation.
The two leaders are also expected to discuss major projects like the second overhauling of the Sukhoi 30 fighter jets, equipping Indian fleet with the R-37 air-to-air missiles that can hit targets up to more than 200 kilometers, along with S-400 and 500 long-range and Verba very short-range air defense systems.
And the two sides are also likely to discuss developing the lighter variants of the missiles, like the BrahMos NG, which can be fitted on all types of fighter aircraft of the Indian Air Force. Now, these missiles will have a capability to hit targets at over 400 kilometers, while longer-range versions of the missiles will engage targets at more than 3 times of the present capability.
Post-lunch, Putin will address the India-Russia Business Forum. Both India and Russia are hoping to energize private sector partnerships and also attract new investments.
Now, in the evening, Indian President Draupadi Murmu will be hosting a state banquet in a Russian president's honor. In view of the high-profile visit, traffic restrictions and diversions have been announced in New Delhi.
Well, since 2000, Putin has visited India multiple times, his last being in 2021 before the start of the Ukraine war. Vladimir Putin is expected to depart New Delhi around 9:30 p.m. local time.
Well, for more on this, we are now being joined by Ajab Zakhim from Washington, D.C. He's a former Undersecretary of Defense in George W. Bush administration and currently Senior Advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. We welcome you on the broadcast. Thank you so much for taking out your time. Now, we're, of course, going to be watching these bilateral take place. I would like to know, how is Washington looking at these talks?
Well, of course, you're going to get different impressions from different parts of Washington. I think it's important to recognize that. For example, the Democrats, the Democratic Party, does not like the fact that it perceives, you can debate whether the perception is correct, but it perceives Mr. Modi as very authoritarian. That's an issue for them. For Mr. Trump, the issue is that India continues to acquire Russian oil and has imposed 50% tariffs on anything that India produces that is related to those oil purchases. So those are points of friction. On the other hand, and it's very important to remember this, first of all, India wants to see itself as an independent actor. It's going to maintain relations both with the United States and with Russia. Secondly, in terms of the U.S.-Indian relationship, the military relationship is quite strong and continues, including training exercises, for example. There's technological cooperation. We've just signed a couple of new agreements in August with India regarding technology cooperation. And of course, there's the Indian diaspora in the United States, which is not only very strong, but very highly placed. For example, I'm in California right now. Silicon Valley, high tech, lots and lots of Indian American players. So it's a complex relationship. The reactions to Putin's visit are going to be mixed. But I think if you bear in mind what is going on between the United States and India, that is still pretty strong in spite of everything.
I agree with you, sir. And of course, while India and the US relationship continues to go in the trajectory that it's going, but also with the camaraderie that we are seeing when Prime Minister Modi received Putin, we also see it as rather symbolic of the warmth that was also reminiscent of what we saw during SCO with Chinese Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, and Prime Minister Modi. So the camaraderie was definitely on display. So a clear message has been sent that while Washington-India ties are important, so are Russia's ties with India. Now, do you see that given in light of these recent developments, there is a chance of the RIC also reviving?
Well, again, the relationship between India and China is sticky in some respects. Obviously, the border has never been settled. And after all said and done, they actually fought against each other, perhaps in a minor way, but they did not all that long ago. To me, it's a reflection of what I read in the foreign minister's book not all that long ago, where he essentially said India wants to have decent relationships, but independent relationships, both with the United States, with China, and with Russia. Look, India is part of the BRICS, but India is also part of the Quad. That should tell you exactly how India has been described by Foreign Minister Jaishankar and how India wants to continue to operate.
Do you see this development as also a change in the world order towards a more multipolar setting as compared to not per se challenging the Western dominance, but create diversification here? Do you see this particular development as leading towards that?
No, I think it's a reflection of what's been going on for a while, actually. Again, India has had long-term relations with Russia, including purchasing Russian military equipment, and yet look how much American military equipment it's buying. Transport aircraft, all kinds of materials, missiles and so on, and is buying some missiles from Russia. India clearly would like to see a multipolar world. And that's its objective. The United States is not necessarily opposed to Indian capabilities and Indian power, if only because India and China, as I said, have a complex relationship, and to us, that's actually to the good. So, yes, the reality is you've got multiple poles, but again, I think that everyone would recognize that at least at this moment, China and the United States are at one level, and then you have Europe, Russia, India at a somewhat lesser level, but clearly, in the case of India in particular, moving very fast up the chain in terms of its economy, in terms of its defense capabilities, and frankly, in terms of its diplomacy.
And also, if I must add, of course, it does show, as my colleague just said, a shift in the whole dimension, because when we talk about relations between India and US, well, we also, look at the immigration that has been taking place. A lot of issues have been taking place, the tariffs that have taken place. So we do see that, yes, there's probably one way which these relations, this Russia and India relations are showing that well, not particularly, again, dominating the West domination, but of course showing that, yes, there are different options that people look for. Even during the tariffs, Brazil was also looking for different options trading with China. How does the U.S. perceive all this?
Well, again, I think the United States, certainly Mr. Trump, has made it very, very clear that he does not want to see India or any other country helping to prop up the Russian economy, which simply helps Putin to continue his war against Ukraine. And especially Mr. Trump is trying to bring about an agreement between the two warring parties. Look, he just did something today at the Institute of Peace between two African countries. But obviously, getting some agreement between Russia and Ukraine would be a huge feather in his cap. But to do that, he has to be able to put pressure not just on Ukraine, but on Russia. And if you recall, the original 28-point peace plan was withdrawn very, very quickly because it was perceived to be too favorable to Russia.
Right.
And the revision is one that the Ukrainians can at least begin to think about living with. So, to the extent that countries are supporting Russia, that is not going to enhance their relationship with the United States. But I repeat what I said earlier. The U.S.-Indian relationship, A, is complex, but B, in many ways, is still quite strong in spite of the limitations on foreign experts coming in on visas and in spite of the tariffs, which are clearly irritants between the two countries.
Well, of course, we'll be looking at it. And when you talk about relations, India and Russia relations do go back historically to since Soviet Russia. But, well, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast and analyzing all of that. We'll, of course, wait and see how this all plays out.
Thank you so much for having me.